Hey everyone, welcome back to John's Watch. Today I'm going to be taking a look at a new game called Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. This game was released on Nintendo Switch 2 on November 6, 2025. Its regular price is $99.99 Canadian or your regional equivalent, and is developed by a AAA game studio and published by Nintendo. This is the third entry in the Hyrule Warriors Zelda spin-off series. Hyrule Warriors is a crossover between The Legend of Zelda and also Koei Tecmo's Dynasty Warriors series. Even if the name Dynasty Warriors doesn't immediately ring a bell for you, although I assume it does for most people at this point, the gameplay style on screen probably will. The Dynasty Warriors games are basically Musou games, which are Warriors games. They're a genre of action hack and slash games where one single playable character battles large armies of enemies to achieve objectives. And these Musou or Warriors style games are very, very distinctive. Hopefully you've seen a little bit of the gameplay by this point, but you are always in control of one character at a time, but you're just mowing down hordes of random enemies. And they're not for everyone, but they are quite satisfying to play. They do really make you feel very powerful as you're just swinging around and just mowing down absolutely like hundreds of enemies. It's kind of cool. This is the third entry in the Hyrule Warriors spin-off series, as I mentioned. The first game was Hyrule Warriors, second one was Age of Calamity, and now we've got Age of Imprisonment. Don't quote me on this, but I believe the first two games weren't canon to the Legend of Zelda story, but Nintendo has specifically said that Age of Imprisonment is canon, and they even, before the game released on November 6th, they even told reviewers, you can't really talk about the story at all. You can't talk about most of the big story beats. Speaking of the story, this game takes place during the imprisoning war that was shown in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And this game takes so much from Tears of the Kingdom, to like a tiny extent Breath of the Wild, but this game like reuses a lot of parts of Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I didn't love Breath of the Wild, I really didn't love Tears of the Kingdom, and I haven't finished either of those. And so when I started this up, and I was instantly greeted by, and I'm not exaggerating here, a 25-minute opening cutscene. I think I got to like walk around as Zelda for like a minute in there and do like a tiny little bit of combat tutorial. But otherwise it really was, from pressing play to after 25 minutes I was finally able to do something else. There was a lot of cutscenes at the start. But the game basically opens with Princess Zelda from Tears of the Kingdom, from the Tears of the Kingdom timeline, being sent backwards in time. It kind of recaps the opening bit of Tears of the Kingdom, which I did remember because I played that part. And Zelda is sent backwards to basically the beginning of Hyrule. She's like knocked unconscious and she's woken up by her ancestors, King Rauru and Queen Sonia. And Zelda basically instantly reveals to them that she is their ancestor from far off in the future. Doesn't really seem to faze Rauru and Sonia. I mean, I guess, time kind of weird things happen in Hyrule all the time. So Zelda tells them, and they basically decide, hey, we'll help you get back to your own time, but feel free to just hang out with us and enjoy ancient Hyrule life in the meantime. Zelda also meets Rauru's sister, Mineru, who is like a researcher into the Zonai technology that you'll definitely be familiar with if you played Tears of the Kingdom. Zelda and Mineru quickly become good friends because they're both they've got keen minds. Zelda has traveled back in time with her Nintendo Switch, and Mineru is very interested in that. So they have fun bonding over, things like that. So Zelda's having a nice time in ancient Hyrule, but who could have seen it coming? Who shows up? But Ganondorf. I know, I'm as shocked as you are. It's very funny. It starts out with Ganondorf just bringing the Gerudo people to Hyrule and being all friendly and joining them. And Zelda's like, hey Rauru, this Ganondorf guy in the future is super evil. And, or sorry, she told Sonia that. And Sonia's like, you can't tell us too much about the future. Even if he does seem super evil, we must trust him for the time being. And then like 5 minutes later, he betrays them, and it's just very funny. When Ganondorf betrays them, he triggers the Blood Moon that you would have seen in Breath of the Wild, and I assume it also came back in Tears of the Kingdom, I can't remember. When the Blood Moon happens, you get all the typical Zelda enemies start spawning around the map. The moblins and things like that. and basically at that point, Ganondorf takes over the land of Hyrule, and you have to work together with special people and your small group of rebels to start clawing back control of the kingdom. And you do this, you're greeted with the map of Hyrule, and once Ganondorf takes over, it gets all covered in red except for a couple of areas that you still have control of. And you basically go into missions, you choose missions from the map screen, and in the missions you do the Dynasty Warriors combat style, and when you've done a certain number of missions or certain types of missions, you'll be able to take control of these little regions of the map, which you'll see on screen hopefully. The missions are very straightforward. You've got a little mini-map of the zone you're in the bottom right. They're never, the levels are never too huge. Sometimes they get a little bit more intricate, I guess, but most of the time you've got almost like an L shape, and you just go from one end of the map to the other end of the map, mowing down waves of enemies along the way. Sometimes you'll have to take over encampments by just wiping out a bunch of enemies in there until the red bar on your screen has depleted, and then you've got control of it. When this happens, you can sometimes set up a camp where you can use some of the resources you've gathered just from playing the game to give yourself some buffs for that level. You'll also have to fight bosses. I guess they're kind of mini bosses because pretty much every level has one of these bosses, but there are actual like big important story bosses. So yeah, I guess we'd call them mini bosses that you fight in the levels, but they'll just be things like a boss bokoblin or a moblin. At the start of the game, you've only got control of Zelda and Rauru, and then also Mineru shortly after. So the first few levels just see you playing as between 1 to 3 of these characters, depending on which mission you've started. And each character plays quite differently. Zelda is a lot more of a magic caster. She's got this cool little light sword saber kind of thing, and she obviously can do melee, but basically your way of doing combat is kind of button mash E. You press Y, or you hit Y a bunch of times to do your regular attack, or you can press X to do your heavy attack, I guess we could call it. But if you chain a certain number of regular attacks together and then do a heavy attack with X, you'll do different combos, basically. And there's a really helpful feature of the game where you can keep this little tracker of how many times you've pressed the light attack, basically. And it shows you the tree of your attack chain. So I found it really helpful to know, like I could just be mashing Y, but I could look over at the left of my screen and see, oh, I've done 4 light attacks. If I switch to the heavy attack now, I'll do this specific combo. So yeah, it is very button mashy, but you have a decent amount of control over what kind of attacks you're doing. You can also hold down R1, what is it on Switch? R, it's just called R, like the right bumper instead of the trigger. If you hold that down, you can do special techniques, and these are very useful for interrupting mini-boss's attacks. You know, sometimes a mini-boss will glow red, they'll be about to do this big attack, and most of the time they'll either charge at you or they'll leap up into the air and do an aerial attack. And most of your characters have the perfect counter to these. So when you see an enemy glowing red and, you know, it looks like they've lowered their head, maybe they're about to charge at you, you hold right bumper and then you press whatever your anti-charge attack is, and you use that, and it counters their attack. They don't get to do the big charge attack, and it also knocks them down so you can do extra damage to them. You're also able to use various zonai devices like this. You can put down, or you can hold, like, basically flamethrowers, ice throwers, water throwers later on, fans. You can either hold those in your hand and just, like, spin around and aim it, or you can, when you've activated it, you can put it down on the ground, which I found quite good to do, especially if I was facing maybe, like, an enemy who's weak to fire. I would pull out a flamethrower, drop it down in front of me, and then just, like, stand in front of it so the enemy would be standing in the fire spray and I would just wail on them. Very satisfying. You can also do these things called sync strikes, and around your character icons at the top left, you'll see a kind of blue glow, which will slowly fill up and surround your character. And once 2 characters have filled this bar up, you'll start getting a prompt when you're close to them on the battlefield to press L, or left bumper. And depending on which characters you're combining, you'll do a unique sync strike skill. And these are super cool, very, very cinematic, do a ton of damage. There's loads of different combinations. You know, you can do Zelda and Rauru, Zelda and Mineru, and a lot more characters later on. Speaking of characters, you do unlock more than just those 3 as you go on. You can unlock some of the Hylian captains, or the Hyrule captains? Hylian captains, I think they are. One of them's got a sword and a shield, and he can even parry enemy attacks, which I found very fun. I haven't used him a ton, but he is around. There's also another one who's just got a 2-handed greatsword. He swings it around and mows down enemies. You also unlock this very strange duo of this mysterious construct. He's basically parts of, I think it's still Zonai technology, that have come together to form a human shape. And he wields a sword. He can turn into a plane. It's very, very interesting. But he's also been traveling with his Korok companion called Calamo. And I think this guy was my favorite. I thought he was quite funny, and I just really enjoyed his combat style. I don't know why. He's just a little Korok, he's got a little sword, but he can do all sorts of elemental attacks without needing to use the Zonai devices. So depending on what combo of Y and X you're doing, he'll sometimes throw out ice in front of him, fire bombs, wind. I thought he was pretty cool. You can also unlock members of the Rito and Zora tribes, and it looks like you can unlock the Gorons later on as well. I haven't got to the Gorons yet. Every character plays quite differently. I mean, it still boils down to you're hitting Y a bunch and X. You're dodging with B, you're doing your sync strikes, you're doing your special attacks, and you're mowing down waves of enemies. But all the characters do feel quite different, quite unique. Because it's based off of Tears of the Kingdom, you've also got the sky levels as well. The sky layer, I guess, of the map was pretty important in Tears of the Kingdom, and so it has been brought into Age of Imprisonment. When you're doing these sky levels, it really reminded me of, like, Star Fox games. I don't know if I'm out to lunch there. But you play as the mysterious construct with Calamo riding on his back, and it's kind of like an arcade shooter, like a light gun shooter. You move around the screen, dodge projectiles, and you basically hold down R1, right bumper, to shoot the entire time and take down all the enemies ahead of you. That kind of level doesn't come up too often, which I'm pretty thankful for, because it did feel like a little bit of a mismatch from the rest of the game. But it was also kind of a nice break from all the Musou style of combat. This game was designed for Nintendo Switch 2, and it definitely shows. All the cutscenes are pre-rendered at 30 FPS, but when you actually get to in-game, it is 60 FPS most of the time. As to be expected, when you've got literally hundreds of enemies around you, you can see drops occasionally, but they really are occasional, and they don't last very long. It's just usually if you're surrounded by a ton of enemies, and you do some big particle heavy, particle effect heavy attack. But for the moment-to-moment gameplay, yeah, it's running at 60 FPS, and it looks and feels really nice. However, we still can't really say that it's like fully designed for Nintendo Switch 2, because it's obviously using a ton of assets from Tears of the Kingdom. All the font, the UI, the HUD, all the enemies, obviously, all the models, they all come right from Tears of the Kingdom. So this was probably a decently low-budget game for them to have to make, because a ton of the resources were already there in Tears of the Kingdom. So this was a very interesting game for me. I've never played an actual like titled Dynasty Warriors game at all. Never super interested me, but I did play Persona 5 Strikers, which was, instead of Zelda meets Dynasty Warriors, that was Persona meets Dynasty Warriors, also by Koei Tecmo. And I really enjoyed that game. Probably not like primarily for the gameplay. I really liked the story, and just it was basically a sequel to Persona 5, so it was just really nice getting to see those characters again, and that's why I really enjoyed it. But the combat is quite fun for, you know, it's decently mindless. It really is just button mashing your way through hordes of enemies. And I found it pretty good for playing after work. I work downtown 3 days of the week, and I get to work remotely the other 2 days. And normally when I get home from my downtown days, you know, I've been up since 6 a.m., I'm tired. Normally all I do is just watch a bit of TV. But I found this pretty good, pretty decently relaxing for playing, even when I was quite tired, because it didn't really take too much concentration, and again, it was just satisfying mowing down all the enemies. I will say, as someone who did not like Tears of the Kingdom, I was pretty bored of the story very quickly. Like I said, it started off with literally a 25-minute cutscene. There are a lot of cutscenes in this game, and I definitely found myself, like, within the first hour, like, when it was a cutscene, even though I had it on Japanese voices with English subtitles, I would still, like, look down at my phone or, like, look onto my other monitor, like, look something up and not really pay attention to the story. Because it just doesn't interest me, because, yeah, I don't like New Zelda, so I don't really care about the story. But as a game, I did find it very fun. I did find, as I got further into it, the map screen got a lot more overwhelming. At the start of the game, you've only got like 4 icons to choose from, and some of the missions are, you basically just hand over some of the materials you've gathered just from playing the game, and you get a journal entry and like something gets unlocked. So when you're looking at the map, not all of the icons are missions that you have to go into. Some of them are just mash A to get through some text, and then you've done it. But just before I stopped playing to record this video, I cleared a mission, and I unlocked so many icons on the map, and it was just hilarious how it kept going, because it adds them like one by one. It's like bam, 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 and it just kept going, and I was like, this is quite a bit to be looking at now. So I was a little apprehensive going into this. You know, it's the 3rd entry in a series I haven't played. It's a spin-off of a game I didn't like. It's apparently a canon story of a game I didn't like. And it's a genre that I have barely played. You know, I've only played one game in it before. So yeah, I was a little worried, but I enjoyed it. I think obviously I was able to talk about it a decent amount there. I'm just looking at how long I've been recording for. That went a lot longer than I was expecting. I think if you really like the story of Tears of the Kingdom and want to know what happened in this Age of Imprisonment, I think you'll probably like this. Assuming you like Musou gameplay. If you like Dynasty Warriors, if you liked any of the Hyrule Warriors games, obviously you're probably gonna like this. I know it's quite a divisive genre, and it's not one that I have played myself, not out of like any dislike for it, just never really occurred to me to play it unless it's a spin-off with a game that I like Persona. But even as someone who didn't really care for the story and doesn't really play this kind of game at all, this was pretty fun. Like I said, it is just very satisfying to roam around this little map and just wipe out hundreds of enemies. Even though this has been long, I'm sure I've probably forgotten to talk about something, so let me know if you've got any questions about the game at all. I'm happy to answer them in the comments if I can. But there you go, that was a look at Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment for Nintendo Switch 2. Thank you guys very much for watching, make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!